countdown. Oh my gosh, where did it go? Oh, it's on the videos.
Okay. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Just going to wait a moment for some of our friends and supporters to join us. I'm going to ask everyone, whoever is going to be joining us, please share this with the various pages and groups that you're part of. We'll reach a lot more people. We'll have a stronger effect. There's a lot that we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about the ICC, the International Criminal Court, that anti-Semitic body that wants to pursue Israel. We're going to be talking about Marc Lamont Hill from the Black Lives Matter, and he was calling for the destruction of Israel. We're going to be talking about a European politician, again, slamming Israel. His video is going all over the internet in BDS circles. We're going to be talking about that. But first, as we start always, we start talking about the Parsha that we just finished reading in the synagogue this past Shabbat. And it's Parshas Yisro, Parshas Jethro, named after the father-in-law of Moses. It's very interesting that the question is, why is it named after Jethro? What goes on in the Parsha? When you're in synagogue, you see what's going on. This is the Parsha where we learn about the giving of the Torah from God to the Jewish people. It's the major event in Jewish history, and it dominates the Parsha. But the Parsha starts off with talking about Jethro, and the Parsha is named after Jethro. There's a big question about that. It should be actually named after the giving of the Torah. But it's not. How's the Parsha start? It's very interesting. This is very, very important lesson here, critical lesson to be learned. Jethro, minister of Midian, the father-in-law of Moses, heard everything that God did to Moses and to Israel, his people, that Hashem had taken Israel out of Egypt. Now pay attention to this, what the rabbis say. They say, the question is, what did he hear? He heard two things. And we're going to talk about the distinction about Jewish ideals and the ideals of the world. And that's critical. Jethro heard. He heard about the miracles at the sea, that the sea parted, and the war against Amalek. So certainly the parting of the Sea of Reeds was a major event. That was a miracle by God, that the Jewish people were being pursued by the Egyptian army, and the Egyptian army on the one hand and the sea on the other hand, and Jews walked through the sea, made it onto dry land, and the sea collapsed on the Egyptian army as they pursued the Jews. A miracle. That alone did not impress Jethro. What impressed him was that after the parting of the sea, the Amalekites pursued the Jewish people and went to war with them. Even when it was known about the miracles that happened in Egypt, how they left, how God was with them. The Amalekites pursued the Jewish people, and the Jewish people were victorious against the Amalekites. And this impressed Jethro, and apparently he became a convert as a result of these two events. That's what it means. Now you can leave it at that and that might be your cup of tea, but here's the point. When war is forced on the Jewish people, we have no alternative. We fight. We will fight. But that's not the ideal. The ideal was, and the focus in this parsha was going to Mount Sinai and receiving the Torah, our way of life. Subjugating ourselves to the yoke of heaven, to the yoke of God. And in the synagogue, when we read this and the 10 commandments are read out, everyone in the synagogue, we stand up for that. We stand up as the reading from the Torah is the 10 commandments. And that's in this parsha. And it goes on and on and on about the Torah being given. That's the major focus in that parsha and of the Jewish people, the Torah being given by God to the Jewish people. That defines us. But somehow the ideals of the world, they're impressed by war, by victory in war. And that's the difference. And we have a difference. And we have to internalize that there is a difference. Israel's accused all the time of, what are you, a Jewish state or a democracy? And the definition of democracy from the radical left is Iran, Syria, you name it, Yemen. Countries that seek the annihilation of Israel. I want to get into this about the ICC and their anti-Semitism, but there's a very important lesson about the giving of the Torah and why Sinai was chosen as the mountain. And no one else could say it better than Rabbi Meir Kahana. We have a video of Rabbi Meir Kahana explaining the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. Why on Sinai? If we could show that video from our studio.
I always used to finish, and I want to finish again with a story from the Talmud. It's an important story. When God wanted to give the Torah to the Jewish people, the Talmud says that all the mountains, the highest and loftiest and mightiest mountains came, and each one pleaded with God, let me have the honor. I want the honor. Give the Torah on my feet. And God said, no, I want to give it, I have a small mountain, its name is Sinai, and I want to give it on that mountain because I want to teach the Jew to be humble. That's the story. That's the Talmudic story. But the Jew should learn to be humble. The Ger Rebbe is a great Torah scholar and also clever. Studied this particular portion, and they asked an obvious question, which I'm sure many of you have asked already. That if God wanted to teach the Jew to be humble, why didn't he give the Torah in a valley? Probably the most humble possible place. Give in the valley. And he gave a better answer. He said, God wanted to teach the Jews two things. One, to be humble. Two, don't be too humble. Never be a valley. Never be a valley.
That's it. You know, we stand up against anti-Semitism. Never allow yourself to be pushed around as a Jew. Never. When BDS organizations are on campus and attempting to shut down events in support of Israel, stand up to them. Do not ever allow them to bully you. When Jews are attacked in New York City by anti-Semites, I don't care if they're white anti-Semites or black anti-Semites, fight back. Hit them hard. Hit them hard. Whenever people try to attack our people, defend yourselves. And on the international front, when the ICC says that they're going to investigate Israel for war crimes and attempt to prosecute Israel, ignoring the reality of the Middle East, ignoring Syria, who gasses their own people, ignoring Hezbollah, who stores weapons in Lebanon. And just recently, when the port exploded because they were hiding weapons that they wanted to use against Israel, the entire port and buildings were destroyed. Where's the ICC? Where's the ICC when the Hutus in Yemen chant to kill Jews? Where's the ICC when Hamas fires rockets into Israel? And when the PA pays the families of suicide bombers money? Where's the ICC with respect to Iran, who says that they want to destroy Israel and they are the main supplier of terrorism throughout the Middle East? Where are they? They're silent. And who helps them? Who helps the ICC? The New Israel Fund funds a lot of organizations. One of their grantees is B'Tselem. And B'Tselem testified before the United Nations Security Council against Israel and called on the ICC and made representation to the ICC to investigate Israel for war crimes. B'Tselem is supported by the New Israel Fund and other so-called progressive Jewish organizations. They also receive funding from various European governments and European NGOs. Europe is soaked with Jewish blood from the Holocaust. During the Yom Kippur War, when Israel needed support from the United States, and the United States was flying military assistance to Israel, and they needed to refuel in Europe, European governments would not allow American planes to land to refuel because they knew the military assistance was going to Israel. They wanted Israel to lose the 1973 war. Can you imagine? Think about that. They wanted another genocide of the Jews. And European NGOs and governments are supporting B'Tselem as they appeal to the ICC to take action against Israel. We have a short video of the leader of B'Tselem testifying in front of the security.
As long as this methodical, relentless process doesn't trigger international outrage and international action, Israel can successfully continue to carry off this contradiction in terms, oppressing millions while is somehow still being considered a democracy. This, in a nutshell, is the pattern the occupation follows. Israeli institutions, in which Palestinians have no representation, move pieces of paper along a well-choreographed disassembly line. How do we legalize the demolition of this community? How do we whitewash yet another killing? How do we take over this plot of Palestinian land? With more than 50 years of experience, we have had plenty of time to perfect this well-oiled farce. We are now quite expert at constructing this facade of legality, which has been very successful at allowing us not to have to deal with any real international consequences.
Por sus presentaciones. El Perú observa con
I am not a traitor, nor am I a hero. The heroes are the Palestinians who endure this occupation with courage and perseverance, who wake up in the middle of the night to find soldiers barging into their homes, who know that if a loved one is killed, impunity is all but guaranteed to the perpetrators.
Estas acciones son ilegales y se constituyen en una violación.
מר אלעד, אתה אזרח מדינת ישראל.
He says he's not a traitor. There is a red line with what it means to be a Jew. The majority of the Jews did not leave Egypt under Moses and were not present at Mount Sinai. We have to speak the truth. The land of Israel, Eretz Israel, belongs to the Jewish people. The Jewish hand was extended ever since its inception to the Arabs who came seeking work and settled in the land of Israel. And then they decided they wanted to go to war because they didn't want to recognize any form of Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel. We have the truth on our side. And it's not just myself that says it, but interestingly enough, there's a growing number now of Israeli Arabs that are speaking out and saying the truth, the reality of what exists in Israel. We have an Israeli Arab who's in the IDF, who speaks clearly and forcefully against the anti-Semitism of the ICC. We have a video. We're going to show this short video.
Dear ICC, this is me, a soldier and a commander in the IDF, the army which you suspect of war crimes. By the way, I'm also an Israeli Arab. I'm here waiting for you to summon me for questioning so I can tell you all about the missiles fired by terrorist organization on civilian population that killed innocent people, including babies, on my city, Nazareth, which is the largest Arab city in Israel, on how Israel treated innocent Syrians who suffered under Assad's war crimes against them, including the use of chemical weapon just a few years ago. But apparently this is not worthy of investigation, huh? Are you accusing Israel of genocide? Ask Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda what it is. She knows better than anyone when in her role as Gambia's Justice Minister, she covered up a dictatorial regime that systematically violated the human rights over use of oppression, rape, and genocide. The IDF is the most moral and human army in the world. When the IDF strikes buildings which house rockets, they first give warning to allow civilians to evacuate. There is no operational or security logic in this, only moral. What other army does that? Every IDF soldier carries a document called the Spirit of the IDF. This document contains the code of ethics of Israeli army and specifies the purity of arms, human dignity, setting an example in conduct and more. Your investigation of Israel is hypocritical and full of bias. Invite me to an investigation. I promise to reveal the truth about Israel and take the opportunity to show the world how Israel is an example and role model of morality and humanity.
It's unbelievable. Just look at the picture on the screen. Read it. The double standard, the delegitimization of Israel. You can only call it anti-Semitism. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. B'Tselem, they put out a statement just a few days ago. The regime of Jewish supremacy from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean, this is apartheid. That's what they call Israel. Jewish supremacy. surrounded by Islamic countries, ruled by Islamic law, tiny little Israel, where Arabs are citizens in Israel and serve on every level in the state of Israel. And they say it's Jewish supremacy and apartheid. And you just heard from an Israeli Arab who refutes that. Like I said, there are the funding for B'Tselem comes from the New Israel Fund and other progressive, so-called progressive Jewish groups and European governments and European NGOs. Here in Canada, just the other day, 2 Canadian Jewish, and let me put that in quotations, politicians, an MP, a member of parliament for the NDP in Winnipeg, and an MPP, member of the provincial legislature here in Ontario, signed a petition calling on Facebook to not adopt the IHRI definition of anti-Semitism and to allow double standards to be used against Israel on Facebook, double standards of hate to be used against Israel and Jews. Can you imagine? You have someone who claims to be Jewish appealing to the Jewish community, vote for me, vote for me. And they join the BDS and they start bashing Israel and calling Israel an apartheid state that should be dismantled. And that on social media, they support the delegitimization of Israel. And that goes on. And these people, they have to be identified, and they should not be granted any kind of a platform in the Jewish community at all, period. Some more information. There's Marc Lamont Hill. He used to be with CNN. He was caught. He went too far. He was on a panel recently with Rashida Tlaib, Peter Beinart, Barbara Ranby, and him, discussing anti-Semitism like he's an anti-Semitic expert. Well, he is. He espouses anti-Semitism. His buddy is Peter Beinart, who tries to appeal to liberal Jewish communities why Israel should not exist as a Jewish state. And Marc Lamont Hill, let me see if I have some information here. I do. Hang on one second. Well, Marc Lamont Hill, basically, he says in a video, he's calling for the dismantlement of Israel in the name of Black Lives Matter. Now, in the Jewish community, a lot of Jewish organizations have expressed support for the Black Lives Matter, mainly the idea of Black Lives Matter. And everybody's for standing up for anyone that's facing any kind of racial attack. But the organization Black Lives Matter endorses the BDS and calls for the annihilation of Israel. And that organization, the Jewish community, must reject fully. We have a video of Marc Lamont Hill, and we're going to show that video. This was from just a day ago.
This amazing panel is certainly no exception. I think part of it, as Omar said, is that this is partly about at the conceptual level, and understanding that our faiths are bound up with one another. That at the ethical level, we understand that we can't dismantle white supremacy or imperialism section by section, that these systems don't have passports or visas. They don't stop at borders, that these are international, transnational movements. And so there's no way to stop a settler colonial movement in Palestine and not be mindful of its relationship to a settler colonial project in New Zealand or Australia or the United States. There's also, it also relates to the extent that we're literally engaged in intersectional struggles. I mean, one of the things that came up in the last few years with the movement for Black Lives was this question around police exchanges. Just as one example, right? That U.S. police are being trained, some police departments are being trained in Israel, and some Israeli police are being trained in the United States. It's very important to say now, it doesn't mean that U.S. repression was learned from Israel. Well, the U.S. has been a repressive state long before Israel. Israel didn't have to teach America how to be repressive or violent or kill Black people, and vice versa. But there is something to be said about the rising authoritarianism, the expansion of a security state, the use of particular types of weaponry that we see both in Israel and the United States that speaks to a global system that we have to dismantle. The other piece here, I think, really quickly, is that the aspiration of many of these U.S.-based social movements are international in scope. We no longer are just looking, when I talk to younger activists, I talk about when Rodney King was beaten in '91, we would have celebrated to simply have an arrest. At one point we wanted Black police chiefs. It's like we wanted to get beaten by Black cops. There was a way that we wanted to integrate police departments. We wanted police to have to live in our neighborhoods. But the freedom dream became more robust and more ambitious as time went on. And this generation of activists is saying, no, let's defund. No, let's abolish. Let's imagine new possibilities. And one of the new possibilities that they've imagined is a world where that is anti-imperialist. That they don't want to just nation build, but they want a world make. And so Black Lives Matter very explicitly is talking about the dismantling of a Zionist project, dismantling of a settler colonial project, and very explicitly embracing BDS on those grounds. So it's analytical, it's tied, our fates are tied up, but there's also a very clear political mission that I think is far more progressive or radical than we had even 20 years ago in the mainstream.
So let me point out that video you just saw of Marc Lamont Hill. That was part of a panel, a Zoom panel put together by the Democratic Socialists of America. It's very influential for students in the United States on campus. So he's having an influence on students when he speaks before the Democratic Socialists of America, and they put the event together. So we have to be very mindful of that. That should send a lot of chills down people's spines, and we have to wake up, and we have to expose these people, and we have to be brave and take steps, serious steps. Now, we have more to show, but I want to just mention there's a phone in here. Anyone could call in if you have a question or a comment you want to make. There's a number to call. It's on the screen, 647-510-5535. Please call. We'd love to hear from you. There's the number. Be interactive. We'll talk to you. You can get through. Lines are open right now. We'll take your call. There's some comments that I'm seeing on the screen as well. Let me just see some of these comments. Yeah. He adores Arab imperialism and colonialism. You're right. Absolutely. That's the position of Marc Lamont Hill. Democratic National Socialists of America. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, when they start espousing such anti-Semitism, there's no difference from Nazi ideology. They want to get rid of the Jews. They'll sleep nice at night. They won't have a problem. The only difference today is that, what's this from Jonathan Usher? Fight strongly is also the lesson of Joshua. No, we have to fight. We have to fight. But, I read a book years ago called The Samson Plan. And that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. A lot of people out there supporting Iran, that Iran wants to build a nuclear bomb and annihilate Israel. The Samson plan says something that if that's your plan, worst case scenario, you're going down and all your proxies are going down as well. If we have to eat tomatoes, we'll eat tomatoes. Here's a call.
I got a call, Mayor. Hold on.
Okay. Let's go. Can I help you?
You're on live.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, thank you.
This is Jasmine calling. I just honestly wanted to know why Black Lives Matter is so anti-Semitic. But I'll let you guys go and answer the question. You guys have a great show, by the way.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jasmine.
Thank you.
Where are you calling from?
Vaughan, Ontario.
Oh, Vaughan. Okay, very good. Local. Okay.
Okay, thank you so.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for your call. Well, why does Black Lives Matter hate Israel and quote Zionists, and they're pretty quiet when Jews are viciously attacked by members of the Black community in New York City in particular? There's a lot of it that goes on. There was a rabbi who was murdered last year at Hanukkah time in his synagogue by a black man. There's been nonstop black attacks against Jewish communities in Brooklyn, and Black Lives Matter is silent about that. Why? I'm not sure why. Malcolm X was anti-Semitic. He's idolized in the black community. Certainly Martin Luther King was a friend of the Jewish people and a supporter of Israel. Louis Farrakhan is embraced at the highest level of black leaders in North America and by these politicians, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, ALC, the progressive movement. It almost seems like it's just natural that Black Lives Matter is going to support this. And if you would have to predict it before they came on the scene, you could predict it. And they were on the scene, and there you go. Marc Lamont Hill, in their name, is calling for the destruction of Israel. It's horrible, but we're not backing down, and we're not going to lose. Where are the Romans who destroyed the Jewish temple? Where are they? They don't exist anymore. The Babylonians who oppressed us, they don't exist, etc., etc.
We got another call.
We have another
Mayor.
call. Let's go. Yes. Can
You're
I help
on
you?
live.
Hey, what's up, Mayor? It's Jordan.
Hey, Jordan. How you doing?
Doing all right. I actually have a few things I want to talk about.
Okay.
One is a statement and followed by a question.
Yeah.
So the first thing is I went to the first Black Lives Matter march in Toronto,
Okay.
downtown,
Mhm.
and I wore my Never Again Canada shirt, and I came with one of my buddies who wore his IDF shirt.
Yep.
And all these BLM supporters were saying, F you Zionists, Zionists not welcome. They're following us and stalking us,
Yep.
and being very intimidating against us,
Mhm.
and ruthless, blatant anti-Semitism.
Mhm.
So that's the statement. I want to ask a question.
Okay.
Why did they get a free pass on anti-Semitism, on hating Jews, and on hating Israel? And why is everyone why are Jews so afraid to call out black people for anti-Semitism?
Well, listen, I don't, I can speak for myself anyways. I do have an influence in the Jewish community, or in the wider Jewish community, in fact, as well. I get calls from all over the place. And I'm very outspoken about Black Lives Matter. I called them out. I'm not too sure why in our community we have community leaders that fail to call them out. And you know something, a Jew could get very bogged down by seeing inaction from a variety of Jewish leaders. That's not the way. Don't worry about that. Maybe they're scared, they're intimidated, whatever it is, it doesn't make it right. And we have to stand up and speak the truth and never back down. And when just over a year ago, the BDS and Black Lives Matter and Antifa were at York University. JD trying to shut down an Israel event. JDL was there, I was there, and we spoke up. We did whatever we had to do to make sure the event went on peacefully, and it went on. I was subsequently banned from York University. It's actually a badge of honor. I don't think anybody else has been banned. I don't believe there's ever been a Jewish leader banned from York University, but it doesn't intimidate it. It's certainly not the last time they're going to see me or hear from me. York University, there still is a lot of work to do. And, you know, there's always another university that our presence is going to be needed, and we'll be there, and we'll do whatever we have to do. And we're going to continue to call out anti-Semitism. We're never going to back down. We're never going to be intimidated by Black Lives Matter people, because we speak the truth, and we're going to look for righteous blacks in the black community who do support Israel, and there are, and hopefully, and maybe they need people to speak to them to give them that courage, because maybe they're feeling intimidated, and we'll get it done. Never back down. Thanks for your call.
All right, great. I actually have a side question.
Yes, go ahead. Side question.
How serious are the implications of the ICC?
Very serious.
Thanks, Jordan.
Okay. Yep, no problem.
Very serious. Okay, if anybody has any other calls, please call in. The phone number again is 647-510-5535. Please call. We'll hear from you. If you have questions or comment, anything, there's, excuse me, there's so much going on right now. It's, well, here's the call. Okay. Yes, go ahead. You're on.
Yes, hi. Just your previous caller,
Yes.
he was asking why Jewish leaders don't call out anti-Semitic organizations such as Black Lives Matter. Wouldn't you say it's kind of a question of money and power? Wherever there's something socially not acceptable, or the option to be politically correct, wouldn't you say that mainstream Jewish leaders always take the position of the mainstream of what society says, and they kind of cower when it's time to rise up beyond that? Do you feel that it has to do with their position and perhaps being marginalized and alienated, and then they lose power, they lose money? Do you think it has to do with that?
Well, I don't really, when it comes to organizations, for instance, like CEJA and B'nai B'rith, and I guess I would include the Simon Wiesenthal Center, I expect them to be active on the political level, which for the most part they are. JDL, myself, we're not active on the political level, although I will testify when I have to before government bodies on, let's say, I have to go to city council and speak the truth about what Al-Quds Day is all about. I will do that. If we have to make some submissions. Years ago, I gave a testimony, evidence about Nazi war criminals living in Canada. I even flew in private investigators that worked with me on the issue, and we gave dossiers and information regarding the personal details of Nazi war criminals with lots of evidence. We have to make representation on certain issues. We will. The Zundel trial, the original information came from myself that led to charges against Ernst Zundel, where he was eventually, I think, extradited or deported from Canada. And he died in jail. Good.
Shame.
But for the most part, we're active on the street level. And that's not happening from CEJA, B'nai B'rith, and the Simon Wiesenthal Center. And I don't say that with disappointment, because I want them to do the best they can on the political level, because I believe when I came on the scene with JDL, we were filling a vacuum. an area that wasn't being addressed. And we're addressing that well, and it's a fit in the Jewish community.
Right.
And
But what about
therefore,
someone-
other groups like advocacy organizations, I guess they're not as vocal as they should be. And there lies the problem, because there's other groups other than the three that I mentioned that are on the political level that should be on the campus level and in our schools as well. Certainly, I think some of the Jewish schools were praising Black Lives Matter, and there were certain rabbis that were praising Black Lives Matter. They have to be called out and identified because, like I said, the Black Lives Matter organization, they're calling for the destruction of Israel. They support the BDS.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anybody else has a call, please call in. The phone number again is 647-510-5535. Call in. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see, there's some comments here. Many Hitlerites and Marxists are working hand in hand in their efforts to show out the Zionists. Yeah, they want to kill the Zionists, the Jews. They want to kill the Jews. Yeah. Good luck with that. We're not, this is not the Jewish community of Nazi Germany. Israel is very successful. And they don't even use 1% of what they have to go after Jew haters that seek Israel's destruction. And as the chief of staff says, they're drawing up plans right now to go after Iran if Iran is going to fully develop a nuclear bomb. They're not going to tolerate it, Israel. And we have to be there for it. There was an interesting article today in the Jerusalem Post by Gil Troy. He lives in Israel. He used to be a professor here in Canada. He's from Montreal. And he wrote an article that he's very upset that, for the most part, American Jews are not rallying to defend Israel at a time when the ICC is going after Israel. And there's a lot of people that the Biden administration are appointing right now that hate Israel and support Iran and support Hamas. It's like night and day from the days of Donald Trump. So he's going, where are the liberal Jews to help us? And he wants to prove his bona fides that he was against Donald Trump when he was president and so on and so forth, et cetera, et cetera. And he expects that he's on the same page with them, and he's finding out and he's realizing that the liberal Jews, the progressive Jews in the United States are not on the same page as he is. And they look at him with the same venom and hate as they view Rabbi Meir Kahane. They don't want a Jewish state. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. Okay, so if you have any comments or questions, please call. There's a European politician. Now, he's called Vera Falkas. You could look at his name. I mean, it really says it all. And he hates Israel, and he's an intellect, so-called intellect. When the Nazis were murdering Jews, quotations, good Christians took over the homes of Jews who were being marched to the death camps, took over their homes. They had no problem going to church, raising their families, giving their wife a nice hug and a kiss on the cheek, and sending the kids off to school. Got European unions today. Same thing, same with a clear conscience. So this guy, he's a European politician. We have a video of him. Just listen to this.
Hey, Mayor. How you doing up there?
Hey, Gary. Good.
I'm going to show the video, and just so you're ready for it. After the video, I'm going to just go and kind of analyze how wrong he is. And the interesting thing about this character is he's got a PhD in economics, he's got a master's in mathematics, and he knows that he's blatantly lying to the public because he's smart. So here's his video. Then I'll talk a little bit about it right after the video.
Okay, very good, Gary. Yep.
I mean, let's think about it. Criticism of Israel is and can never be a criticism of the Jews when remarkable people like, my heroes, personal heroes, Hannah Arendt and Albert Einstein, questioned the very idea of a Jewish state in Palestine. Because they thought, and I think quite rightly so, in a sense, that, even though I don't have a definitive view on this, that to talk about a Jewish state in Palestine, you need to create apartheid. Because what do you do with the Arabs? Unless you simply create genocide and ethnic cleansing once and for all. Speaking of apartheid, apartheid is another unique crime against a people. It has been practiced nowhere except in South Africa and now in Israel. And I say this in the full knowledge of the charge that I am laying. Apartheid is not simply ethnic cleansing, it's not simply getting rid of the people in order to take their land. It is to use architecture, town planning, education policy, the army, the police, the universities, every vestige of power and state authority in order to create Bantustans in which you put a population that you use as day laborers, okay? You deny them all rights, you deny them anything except a quasi-autonomy, the purpose of which is so that you don't have to deal with them, you don't need to vaccinate them, you don't need to provide health, education, and so on. This is a civil rights issue, and it's only in South Africa and now in Israel that this state of apartheid has been created by the state of Israel. Now, we have a duty to reject the view that speaking of apartheid, of the apartheid that Israel is building in the land of Palestine, is anti-Semitic. We have a duty to reject the view that speaking.
Okay, so let me go over a couple of things first, if I might. First, let's just review a little bit of what he said.
To talk about the Jewish state in Palestine, you need to create apartheid. Because what do you do with the Arabs? Unless you simply create genocide and ethnic cleansing once and for all. Speaking of apartheid, apartheid is another unique crime against a people.
So first of all, I don't know what his obsession is with the Jewish appetite. I don't understand why he has any problem. It's true we have good appetites. In fact, most of our holidays are celebrated because of our appetites. I think the reality is that what he is, he's a closet Jewish kind of foodie. And actually, I found a picture of him online. It was kind of hidden, but this is the best depiction. I have it here somewhere in the files of, let's see. Well, first, let's just talk about this guy. Okay, so why is he so obsessed with our Jewish appetite? First of all, appetite is a unique crime against a people. I'm not quite sure why. And we Zionists need to create an appetite. We have an appetite. So who is he to suggest that we need a better appetite? Particularly when you think about our holidays, they're all about appetite. They're all about they tried to kill us, we survived, so let's eat. It's all about our appetite when you think about it. So if we get back to who he was talking about, which I find particularly offensive, the first person he mentions as if she's an anti-Zionist is Hannah Arendt. And I might say that Hannah is a very special name to me since my youngest daughter. So he mentions this woman born in 1906, and when anti-Semitism engulfed the land, she surrounded herself with Zionist activities and with Zionists. In fact, in 1933, she said if one is attacked as a Jew, one must defend oneself as a Jew, not as a German, not as a world citizen, not as anything other than that of being a Jew. She was arrested by the Gestapo for saying this, and while awaiting trial, she actually escaped and went to France and finally made her way to New York City. Her reputation is so well established, and she went on to say that people can be a minority only if they are a majority elsewhere. She was an ardent supporter of Zionists' political, economic, social, and economic accomplishments. She argued for the right of a Jewish Palestine, the right of a Jewish army. Her discussions, writings, and opinion regarding Zionism are philosophical, intricate, and complex, and anyone's attempt to say she's pro or anti-Zionist is simplifying an incredibly complicated woman. At a young age, she mastered French, German, Greek literature, wrote poetry, founded a philosophy and Greek clubs at her school. Unfortunately, she was expelled at the age of 15 for starting a boycott against a teacher who she was unhappy with. When she arrived in America, this is just a short list of her accomplishments. So in addition to her commentary on Hannah, let's talk about her commentary on Albert Einstein. Here's an old video of Albert Einstein.
המבט ההיסטורי מגלה כי אלברט איינשטיין היה מעורב בפעילות ציונית ענפה בגופים שונים. פעילות זו מגיעה לשיאה ב-1923 כאשר איינשטיין מבקר בארץ ישראל. איינשטיין מתקבל בארץ כגיבור לאומי וכגאון עולמי.
המחויבות של אלברט איינשטיין התחילה כבר שנים קודם לכן, כאשר ב-1919 הצטרף לתנועה הציונית. הוא הפך לבן בריתו של פרופסור חיים ויצמן בהעמדת היוזמה של הקמת האוניברסיטה העברית בירושלים בעדיפות עליונה בפעילותה של התנועה הציונית.
So it's true that at the very onset of Zionism, Albert Einstein had some reservations because he thought perhaps he could make peace. So when things first started, it's true, but after the Holocaust, he had a major change in heart. And he became very pro-Zionist, very established the state of Israel. So if you see him before the Holocaust, he indeed supported the idea of Jewish-Arab cooperation and went, in spite of that, on a Zionism fundraising tour in America. However, after the Holocaust, he changed his mind completely and became quite Zionistic indeed with these quotations.
Absolutely.
So my final commentary on this person is that his name is Varoufakis. Emphasis on the fuckus. Where the fuck is he talking about? He's a founder of a party in Greek which proclaims itself as a bunch of left, green, liberal Greeks. Now we're talking about Black Lives Matter, Jewish Lives Matter. He's talking about Green Lives Matter. I don't even know where that comes from. So from South Texas, back to you, Meir.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Listen, you know, we have to continue to speak the truth. There's no question about it. We have a lot to do, a lot of work to do. You know, there's news coming out every day. It's almost as if we should have this program, this show every day. Maybe we'll increase it to be twice a week as we move forward. We have to get the information out there. We have to be very active on this. We cannot be asleep at the switch, ever. If anyone has any comments or questions, please call. We're almost at it. It's 8:24 right now, so the time is just 6 more minutes, but please call 647-510-5535. Listen, you know, we showed a video of an Israeli Arab. There are Israeli Arabs that are waking up and supporting Israel. There are Arabs, Arab countries now making peace with Israel. There are large Christian movements supporting Israel, Christians United for Israel, various pastors, church leaders that are supporting Israel. They know what the truth is. We're getting along. We're making progress. We're taking the high road. We're speaking the truth. But there are people out there that are engulfed by hate and the epitome of evil, which is anti-Semitism, calling for the destruction of Israel, blaming Israel and the Jewish people for all that is wrong in the world, blaming Israel for coronavirus, although Israel is helping out with medicine and cures and vaccines, and for the size of country that they are, unbelievable what they're doing. Look at, I'm in Canada right now, and you know, Canada doesn't even come close to what Israel's doing right now with vaccines. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense at all. But and you know, in a sense, I say that with pride for Israel. in another sense, I say that with astonishment that everybody is trailing behind. And, that's not good. That's not good. So people should follow the example of Israel and spread goodness in the world and speak the truth. Just a few more minutes left. The number is 647-510-5535. It's always a blessing being on air with people, sharing the Parsha, sharing the information that's going on. And, there's so much. We have to, when I say we, I'm very active in the Jewish community. Jewish community has to be very active in shining a spotlight on those who are in our community that are seeking harm of our community, that want to harm our community, that want to harm Israel. They have to be exposed. Those two so-called Jewish politicians, they have to be thoroughly exposed. Now, one of the politicians is in Toronto. She gave a speech in the Ontario legislature, I think it was just over a year ago, where she was calling on the government to, calling on Revenue Canada to strip the charitable status of the Jewish National Fund. It's unbelievable. And then just over a year ago, she was at a Hanukkah party at a synagogue, and she made a video, and the synagogue made a video of their party, and she spoke at the party. And I contacted the rabbi when I saw the video, and I said, Rabbi so-and-so, this politician, I just want to give you some background about her, that she's a hater of Israel. And here's the evidence. Here's the information. Do not give her respect. And we have to do that again and again and again, because we cannot allow a platform, a legitimate platform, to be given to those people who are with the BDS. And, a few shows ago, we were talking about the Canadian Jewish News that is being revived. And they have which is called the Canadian Jewish News Lounge on Facebook. They're actually allowing BDS people to post BDS articles on this site. And when you expose that, they will block you. So we have to expose who's behind this new CJN that wants to grant legitimacy to the BDS. Don't. These BDS organizations, they endorse, they support the Intifada. What's the Intifada? It's not fun and games. Pizza parlors in Israel have been blown up. Jews have been murdered. That's the Intifada. Call them out. Join us in calling them out. We cannot turn a blind eye. And if we have rabbis who are sympathetic rabbis, who are sympathetic to so-called progressives that are heavily involved with the BDS, call them out. Call them out. And if they have to be replaced, they got to be replaced. And in many cases, there are some rabbis that have to be replaced with other capable rabbis. What's the time now? We got about a minute.
I do want to say something. Okay. There's a great little kid. His name is Jacob, the Moroccan monster.
Okay.
It's his bar mitzvah tomorrow.
Oh.
Mazel tov, Jacob. Unfortunately, it's only a few people.
Mazel tov, Jacob.
Whatever. But hopefully next year, I'd love to take this kid.
Hey,
to
listen,
Jerusalem
you know what? It's a shame. Shame during the corona right now, but it's going to ease up eventually.
Yeah.
So next year, on the exact same date as the bar mitzvah is now, you take him to Israel, you take him to the Kotel, you take him all over, you take him to the Dead Sea too.
The IDF soldiers, remember the Kotel on a Friday night?
Yeah.
That was amazing.
It is incredible when you're at the Kotel with the IDF and you're dancing and singing. It's beautiful.
It really hits home.
Yeah.
That's how every bar mitzvah should be.
Yes.
Bar mitzvah, those ways should be.
Yep. At the
That's when
Kotel.
you really say, wow, this is what it's about. It really is. So
And eventually on Har Bayit.
Yeah.
On the Temple Mount.
Absolutely.
Eventually.
100%.
Eventually, 100%. 100%. Oh, let's see, a commentator. There used to be a Twitter account, somebody's name, and a pro-Zionist Islamic woman For some reason, the account has been suspended. Yeah, for some reason. A lot of accounts are suspended. That's the double standards that we're living in. So
If it's
listen,
negative,
it's going to, you know, maybe we're coming to a time when it's going to be Morse code and it's going to be, you know, a tin can with a string attached to it.
Yeah.
You know, or the old time telephones, right?
I missed those.
Where we'll call some kind of an operator to connect us to a long distance phone call.
What number do you want? 5.
Exactly. Listen, it's been a blessing speaking with everyone. I want to thank you all. Please share this. Go on our Facebook page, join it, like it, so you get notifications all the time. It's a new page and it is growing. We're making a lot of gains. We're having an influence. We're going to have more of an influence because you're going to help us. Thank you very much. Shalom, shalom. All the best to everyone. And thank you to our doctor in the studio for assisting. Videos were great. Everything was great. The phone calls were excellent from the people. You know, as we go on, you know, maybe we will have an additional show during the week. Who knows? Maybe we'll do something on a Sunday where we could have a guest on from Israel. So we could do it earlier in the day, and their time zone is 7 hours ahead of us. Who knows? There's a lot of ideas we have, but the information is coming fast, and we need to get it out as quick as possible. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Please share this. Shalom, shalom. Until next week.
And donate, please. Thank you.
And donate. Go on our website and donate. Thank you very much.